Hello, this is Nimzing. I am here again presenting to you the next episode of the tutorial, Learning to Build Database using a very simple programming language. At the last tutorial, we had shown how when you have a database built up to this standard, you could fill it so simply, choosing a date from the calendar and deciding address here and clear it. Okay, now we want to activate this button, which is known as submit button, where we can send this information to the back end, and at some point we want to retrieve that information and show on this field as well. But first of all, you want to be sure that this is not going to submit an empty field when you click on that. In other words, if you have clicked and then there's nothing within this place, it should alert you that you're submitting an empty field, and so should not go on. And so we'll learn quite a bit of things here. Validating the entries before submission, and we pop up some errors or information. All right, join me as I code on. So here, the intention is to get on this submit button, and we'll take it down. Remember, all of this will have to happen while everything is true. So the while loop, while true, then you can actually say if event that is clicking the button is saying submit, okay, full colon, then you should bring up some information. And we can say we then tend to actually let's just name some of the values that we're dealing with. Let's name on name, let's put the values there as, remember the value for name. Okay, so let's make a conditional statement here. If name, in other words, whatever the value of name is, equals to double equals, is empty, meaning nothing within there, then we should pop up an information, kind of an error statement. And there are many pop-ups, but we can choose just to state, or we can select using that. Once you start typing it, it will come up pop-up error and say missing name. Okay, please insert name before you continue. Okay, let's try that to give you a feel of what it would show. Run, and let's try to say submit. It crashes. Why? Because we had not finished. We put if, but we didn't say what would happen after that. So we need to activate some information before it can proceed. Okay, so we keep on coding. If event submit, and the name is saying is empty, you have to bring up an arrow. Okay, so let's do that for the other variables. I'm going to put about 5, as you remember. So we have put date of birth, DOB, so it would be DOB, missing date of birth. Okay. Next will be gender. Please insert gender. Okay. Next would be address. Pardon me, I need to correct whatever key here so that it can correlate, otherwise it would bring up an error. So address will be okay. Last would be phone number. Let's imagine we don't want to put anything, no error for phone number, for example. So let's remove that part. All right, so now we've said that if this something, it should bring up a problem. Otherwise, so that is else, then you put that kind of full column. You try, and you're going to put some information within that place. And if, despite trying, there's not something wrong, you say except. These are all coding languages. And then you can actually bring up an arrow here, pop up kind of message. Some arrow. Kindly report to the admin team. It's still showing underlined information, so needing some aspects. So within here, let's fill up that space with some kind of information. So we will actually call this a summary list, and let's give it some string information. The following information has been added to the database. This is going to be something that will come up. So let's give certain information, and then we can say we call it with a pop-up kind of that stuff there, SG pop-up. We can say OK, cancel, in order to be able to make some choices. You will see why I'm choosing specific pop-ups. And within here, I'll give some information, which is that summary list. That you capture this string and put it within that information, and you draw the attention of the person entering the information. Please confirm entry. Okay. Now we'll make it a bit more challenging here. Say if choice, let's do a bit significant. We call it choice here so that we make some room for choice, choosing things. So choice. So if choice equals to OK, then we should clear input. Do you remember the input, clear input function that I made there? Now we're using it. Okay. And then we actually say a pop-up that should clear by itself, pop-up quick. Saved to database. Okay. But whenever there's an if, you always have an else. So you have an else, gives you a pop-up OK. And you can say edit. In other words, if it's not clearing, then you want to edit the entry. Now, this is going to be much more intuitive than that. So what we will do is to make sure that the summary has all the information that you have already gotten there, so that the user can actually see before deciding whether the information is correct or not before final hitting the button to submit. So I'm going to demonstrate here what we've got so far before making it a bit slightly complicated for you to follow. But for now, just look at what we have done and have achieved. Sorry about that. And submit. You capture the value and give it a string name, and you say if that string is empty, bring up an error message. All right, let's try that. You may appreciate it that way. Okay, so we try to do that. It crashes. So the dictionary is saying there's a type error here, and it gives me the information that in line 34 in module. So what do we do? It's very likely that name is a reserved problem. So let's see if we can change it a bit and see whether that corrects the error. Right, so I think this is the error here. The value should not have round brackets. In other words, they should be square brackets. Okay, so sometimes it's very important and significant to recognize what error has happened, and then you can actually correct them as a part of debugging exercise that helps all coders. So you remove all that is surround the errors there and correct it again and see what happens. And I hope you're following. And so all of them have now been replaced with the square brackets. Let's see what happens next. Okay, let's try now. Very good. So you see, it brings up this error because you didn't put in any name. It says insert name before you continue. Okay, and then of course date of birth is empty, and it brings up that information. And then gender again is empty, and it says there's an error, an address is empty. Okay, so it would definitely not go on. So let's imagine that you put in a name, whatever you enter, and try without completing. Right, so it actually recognizes that name was not empty, date of birth was not empty, gender was empty. So it brings up that error and it goes on from that point and gives you room to fill that up. Okay, and then you try, and then address still empty. Okay, so you put some address, imagine that. Remember, we didn't say anything for emergency contact, so it does not need to be validated. In other words, you can submit without a telephone number. So let's imagine we're submitting with all information entered. Very good. So this is the important point which we will look at next time, and perhaps within this same video. It then draws this information which is here, summary list. The following information has been entered to the database. Please confirm entry. If you say cancel, it will say edit entry. Okay, so let's imagine you say you edit it by adding a telephone number and you submit. Okay, so you confirm now and see what happens. It brings up this information and disappears, saved to the database, which is what you want. So we want that pop-up, the original one, to be populated with what you have entered in each of these fields before you then submit to the database. How do we do that? I'll close this and continue from that point. And perhaps we may do it at the next video because this has taken some time. But if you're not tired, I think we can continue. So come to this summary list area and see what you can do here. So right in front of it, you give new string values. And if you have learned coding, at least a little bit of it, you recognize that there are some terminologies that they use. And here we will connect. I think I'm going to use very simple language so that you can appreciate what I'm saying. Certain terminologies. So we put this name within a new line, and we will add plus a value. In other words, this information will draw the value that is the user would have entered, and then you can add summary lists. Sorry, again, this summary list of plus equals to, and then puts that NA. It takes that line and add to the summary list. Okay, that is plus equals to. That is the conventional terminology. We will do that. Copy, remember the way of doing things like that. Plus Command C. Then we're going to put just about 1, 2, 3, 4 to fill in those other values. Remember, we'll then go on to DOB, gender, address, and then phone. These values must correlate with all the key values, and of course correspondingly for date of birth, let's put DB. When you change, and then you can actually make sure you change this as well, date of birth, and you would put a DB here as well. Okay, gender, correct this, and we'll put a G or GE, and you correct this to G. Address AD, address, correct that to AD. Okay, telephone, tel, phone contact, and then you change that to tel. Well, everything looks clean and there's no error coming up, so we can try to see what it looks like at this point. Okay, remember our overall code is actually not too long, about 68 lines of code, and it's actually going to do something very interesting. Run, and there you have it. I've demonstrated other bits, so I will show you again what goes on here. We're selecting, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, submit. Now can you see something very interesting? So it actually brings up that information, name here, and you can see demonstrated. Date of birth the same, male. It takes that, brings it up here, displays it for you, and number just as it is, and then it asks you to confirm your entry. If you say no, it will tell you to edit, so you come and edit whatever you wanted to edit that was wrong. You wanted to say this chap was from China or somewhere, and then you go on, and you're happy with the entry. Okay, then you confirm, and it says saved, and then disappears and clears it for you for the next entry. I think this is exciting, that you could actually make a very simple system of this nature by submitting a button, capturing the information, and if it's empty, make it bring up an error message, correct the error, and edit, and then try to capture all the information and display it within an interface, confirm that your entry is correct, choose to edit or submit. And once submission goes through, clear the field for the next person and save to a database. I think that is it for now. If there was some other problems, it will come up and it will tell you to report to the admin team. But this is just an important component of the app in order that it will not crash. We will look at creating a little bit more information here so that the submit button will not only bring up that information of save to database, but it will actually go to a real back-end interactive database, and with a desire to capture whatever information is in that database and bring it up so that at any point the user can actually see all the information that have been entered. Thank you very much, and I hope you subscribe and come back to learn more. If you have any queries, do not hesitate to get in touch via comment section. Thank you very much. See you. Bye-bye.